Welcome to Scaling Impact, where we decode how entrepreneurs are harnessing the power of the UN Sustainable Development Goals to create remarkable and impactful businesses that drive transformation on a global and local human scale. We explore how sustainability is elevating our human consciousness and catalyzing us to create within constraints. We decipher why now is the biggest entrepreneurial opportunity since the dawn of industrialisation and what leaders and entrepreneurs can do to harness the winds of change. I'm Anders Nilsson, global futurist, EO Sydney Impact Champion and father, and your co-host with Lisa Andrews for Scaling Impact. Ladies and gentlemen, dear human beings, entrepreneurs, fellow thought leaders, welcome to EO Sydney's global podcast, Scaling Impact. I am super excited today to be joined by Warwick Johnston from SunWiz. Welcome to our Scaling Impact show, Warwick.
Thanks very much, Anders. Pleasure to be here.
So we have the opportunity on this show to tune in to thought leaders and entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs who really unearth their passions on this show and how they're leveraging their UN Sustainable Development Goals to scale their impact. And today, it is great to have Warwick on the show. He's doing some really cool stuff in the solar panel and solar industry with SunWiz. I'm going to let you tell a little bit of a story, Warwick, about what you do at SunWiz and where you sit in the ecosystem as we move towards renewable energy.
Sure. Thanks, Anders. We are consultants and advisors to the solar industry in Australia. Our business focuses very much on market analytics. So whereas you might be aware of all the real estate data and tracking your housing price and figuring out what sales are going on where, we are doing that for the solar industry. And the purpose of that is to help the businesses that are involved in the solar industry to make well-informed decisions. And the why of that is because in this climate emergency, we really don't have time for companies to be making mistakes and then having to backtrack and then head down the right path after having burnt all that time and cash heading down a mistaken direction. So the information we provide helps businesses in the solar industry to execute better and head confidently in the right direction. Look, I was involved in the solar industry from when it really was a cottage industry back in 2005, when I transitioned from telecommunications into solar, largely off passion and wanting to do something with the 8 to 12 hours a day I was working each day, something that was purposeful and meaningful. And so since 2005, I was working in the solar industry and was working in consultancy, engineering and advisory. And in 2008, I moved up to Byron Bay to start living a more sustainable lifestyle than I was living in the city. And I was fortunate to get some experience with a solar retailer there just as the industry was starting to take off. And what I saw was that there were a lot of businesses around that needed help and they were really starting to run without any systems or knowledge of which way they should be running. And so therefore I provided some guidance based off my then 4 years of experience in the industry to help those businesses head in the right direction. And as I was doing so, I realized that there was a real information gap. Some of the experience I'd have working with the industry organizations, we'd regularly hear, we just don't know what's going on out there. There's information that's missing. And so we don't know even if we're making good progress on our roadmap. And you'll see the Sustainable Development Goals has some sections that the KPIs they're measuring. If you don't have any KPIs, any instruments, you're kind of operating blind. And the whole industry was in that state. And so as a little project, I said, I wonder if I can answer that question. What's happening in the industry, and was able to do so and found my first client there was just really, really thankful to have that information in their hands and said, oh, thanks for that one-off. can you do that every month for me? And I said, sure. And I guess like so many entrepreneurs, when you look back and you think, perhaps there's an element of, cleverness behind, what we do. But it also boils down to figuring out, perhaps by chance, what the industry wants or your customers want, and just doing more and more of that. And of course, as I found with that customer, there were many other more customers in that boat. So I headed in that direction, and hence we are the preeminent provider of market analytics to the solar industry now.
And so given some of those foresights or those insights that you share with the industry, what are some tangible, digestible insights that you think, the average Aussie or, other small entrepreneurs should have about the size of the opportunity? Are there any, green, good news stories that we should be aware that maybe we haven't been as tuned into as we maybe should be? Sure.
Some of the exciting news is that Australia is one of the leading countries. It's actually the leading country in terms of solar power per head of population worldwide. We're actually very excitedly, for me at least, a leader in the solar industry. And a large reason for that is all of the solar power that's on people's homes. There's over 3.4 million systems spread across Australian households and businesses, and increasing amount of that is going on to businesses as well. Of course, there are solar farms too, but Australia leads the world in what we call decentralized energy on those rooftops. And it's a major opportunity for businesses to be involved in providing sustainable energy solutions as we transition from the old energy provision to the new. But for any business that has a roof, effectively to be getting far lower cost energy than they can be getting from the grid. And at the same time, it's green energy. The second factor, which I'd say that is really useful for everyone to know as we move forward, is that people's consumption of electricity is going to increase significantly over coming years as we electrify what is currently fuels that we're burning fossil fuels for. And that electrification may be electrifying your vehicle fleet, moving to EVs. It can be electrifying process heat and other processes. So essentially, your consumption of electricity is going to go up, and you've got that capability now to provide your own electricity. So we're going to see a significant growth of opportunity there for businesses to be taking leadership actions, both for their own hip pocket, but also for the environmental reasons.
So Saul Griffiths and, Dr. Electrify, as he's also known, and Dr. Ross Garneau and others in your space talk about sort of, superpower Australia, given our abundance of solar and wind. And then, of course, we have a lot of the minerals as well available for the green transition in Australia. But when businesses think about their electrification and the electrification opportunities, oftentimes the sort of resistance I hear is that people go, we're only renting our premises, and our landlord doesn't want to invest in putting solar on the roof, etc. Like, how do you meet, or how do you communicate in a way that people feel empowered to actually make a difference and influence these infrastructure changes?
It's happening in a few ways, and what we see now is, at least with greenfield sites, any new build of an industrial or commercial premises is going up with solar on the roof. So that shift is happening. For the existing building stock that many people are in, and yes, often holding leases on, that is a barrier. The challenge is there that if you're not going to be in there if you're going to be there for anything longer than 5 years, then really you're going to get your money back in that time. But the real money-making opportunity is in the latter years once you've paid off your system. And so, there is a split incentive there between landlords and tenants. Often pretty easy to negotiate, and landlords can be very happy to have an upgrade to their property. And there are financing options that can help along those way. And another EO, Guy Olian from SmartEase, can talk to you about that. He's been on your podcast. The other aspect is there's even solutions exactly for that scenario that are relocatable solar systems. And my neighbour on the street, James Larrard, runs a company called SolPod, which is exactly targeting that requirement. So there's certainly actions you can take and should be taking, especially as electricity prices are going up. If you're going to be in your premises for any decent amount of time, then you'd be mad not to look at solar.
Yeah, this is the other thing, right? We're facing now in Australia a housing crisis. We're living in a high inflationary environment when we're recording this episode. We've got interest rates going through the roof, no pun intended. And so, again, people are thinking, how do we save at the till? Do we keep the kids in private schools or otherwise? Or, do we downgrade our options at the grocery store from sustainable to something more run off the mill? And, how do we just feed the family? In that environment, are you seeing people kind of missing the opportunity around solar as a longer term saving, or are you seeing people flocking to these technologies when we're even thinking about the cost of heating or cooling our houses, etc.?
It's a bit of both. The people that realize that electricity prices are rising faster than inflation, in fact, they're one of the drivers of inflation, realize that actually the opportunity to have more money, disposable income, is a smart reason to go and invest in a solar power system, often using finance. And so, yes, even at today's interest rates, the availability of finance for a solar power system means that you're going to be having more money. You're making more savings on your electricity bill than your outgoings on your finance for it. So it's actually a great way of addressing those cost of living pressures, is using solar power systems, notwithstanding that the upfront price can be a barrier to those people who don't look just beyond that to the opportunity on the other side.
If we were to do a little bit of time travel out to 2030, Warwick, which is, of course, when the UN Sustainable Development Goals are geared towards that point in time, and we wake up in 2030, will Australia and Australians have seized the opportunity that is latent within its abundance of solar and wind?
I firmly believe so, particularly because so much of our solar power is driven by private actions rather than waiting for government or significant action from the electricity industry itself. There's some big challenges out there for all the solar farms and wind farms to get connected and with the transmission infrastructure, and we're seeing that's taking a lot longer than we would like. That only increases the need for distributed generation on people's roofs and the opportunity to drive that faster, because in its absence, electricity prices are even higher. So I think we absolutely will be seizing the opportunity. Talking more broadly about this Sustainability Development Goal number 9, which relates more than just to clean energy, and also into innovation, industrialisation, and infrastructure. The key thing we're going to see in this space is that, firstly, the technologies that support the clean energy revolution are something that Australia can have a leading advantage in, and there's major business opportunities out there for EOers inclusive to harness those, and even to then be exporting technology and know-how to the world as we move very much into a very new digital energy economy. Lots of business opportunities arise. And part of that then is also the transformation of existing business infrastructure as we take process heat, etc., and other processes and electrify them. So good opportunities there for businesses that are using that energy to change how they do it, as well as the suppliers of services to those industries. And there's even beyond that to the bigger picture of infrastructure. And at the moment, Australia exports a lot of energy, coal and gas, and that will change significantly in the coming decade and beyond. And Dr. Alan Finkel, Australia's chief scientist, points out that we're about a third of the way through making our existing electricity consumption renewable. So we've got to build 3 times, another 2 times what we've already built just to de-electrify our existing consumption. Then with all the electrification that's going to occur of vehicles and other processes, we need to do what we've currently done another 3 times, so we're up to 9 times. And that's before we even go and decarbonize all of the energy that we're sending overseas and material. What's likely to occur there is actually Australia is going to be doing and going to need to do a lot more onshore enhancement of what we send offshore by doing minerals processing, for example, green steel, making that first step, and all of the materials that are required for all the batteries to power all these electric vehicles, etc. So huge opportunities in Australia, both for supplying green energy, using green energy, and even sending it overseas.
So Warwick, what's the local or the national opportunity here, given that there are sometimes geostrategic concerns about China and its manufacturing and even minerals base that is, very advantageous towards China. I sometimes hear that, we should be having more of a manufacturing base here and not shipping all of our minerals overseas. Have you got a point of view, or what do you think the market opportunity is for more of a national, localized manufacturing base?
Look, I think the trend, regardless of my point of view, because it's not going to influence too much, the trend is more towards deglobalization. Since what we've seen through supply shocks through the pandemic and now war in Ukraine, local manufacturing is a significant trend, and we've seen that also in America with what's called the Inflation Reduction Act, but a lot of it's driven towards local manufacturing for a green energy economy. And there's almost a trade war in who can provide greater subsidies to attract more businesses in that sector. Europe's also doing things, but China has incredible leadership in this space. Not only does it supply 90+% of the world's solar panels, but it's also the biggest country for rolling out solar farms. So it's doing a lot, and we'd have a lot to catch up on. We do have some interesting local technology for producing solar panels. We have one company, Australian company, that imports cells and converts them into panels. I met with another local just on the weekend that is doing some very interesting technology developments with concentrating solar power using photovoltaics and recovering some of the heat. And then there's also the company SunDrive, which is backed by Mike Cannon-Brookes, which is Australian technology that's looking to do Australian manufacturing. It's going to take a significant amount of effort to produce things like solar panels in Australia, but there's good reasons for doing so. The challenge will be, of course, it's probably always going to be at higher cost than China, which just has reached these scales which have favourable economies of scale. But then there's other aspects that you mentioned there as well, and that is the materials which go into things like solar panels, but more broadly across the world's industries. And Australia has a huge amount of those and already ships a lot overseas. We're actually well positioned. I think 8 of the 9 key ingredients to modern batteries are found in Australia. We've got rare earths. A lot of those things are actually to our advantage. We just need to harness it well.
Is there ever like a quality conversation in terms of, I don't know if we're beyond that point where people go and get a little bit nervous about manufactured in China. Is there at all a local story here of Australian manufactured being somehow more advantageous to the Aussie consumer, Aussie businesses rolling out solar panels?
Concerns about Chinese solar panels and inverters have evaporated. They're excellent technology that lasts the distance. Of course, there are exceptions, and historically there were more exceptions, but they do a very good job. The reasons for buying Australian-made aren't because of concerns about quality from overseas manufacturer.
And what about the sort of halo effect or the other enablers as we shift from, say, fossil fuels to renewables? Are there impacts that you see that are beyond just the fact that our costs of electricity will drop? Like, how is this going to make us more competitive and businesses more innovative?
Well, look, Australia has plentiful resources, natural resources in wind and sunshine. So Australia's economy was founded off low-cost energy, and we're going through a transition period now where it's not so low cost, but ultimately we will have an advantage there, and be able to export as a result some of the materials that we provide, potentially some of the power, whether it be shipped or cabled overseas. So Australia does have significant advantages, and I'm excited about where this will get to. But it's tumultuous. This is a very, very rapid transformation of a sector which underpins not only our economy but our way of life. So there's going to be some bumps in the road, and with those bumps, there's both dangers, but there's opportunities. And I'd like to think that Australian ingenuity can be applied to some of these challenges, and that ultimately, we're able to ride through this well and out the other side. It takes leadership to get there, and though our current governmental leaders are more aligned in that direction than they were previously, I think the real opportunity here is in business leadership. And it's great to see some of those Australian businesses going and taking their businesses overseas to help the rest of the world too.
What would you do? Say you're an EO member in Melbourne or Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, or if you're an EO accelerator, or if you're an entrepreneur starting out. Have you got any advice, or what are some of the sort of easy wins in this space that people should be thinking about as part of their innovation or future strategy moving forward?
Look, I think the easy wins are putting solar power on your roof. The next easy win is buying electric vehicles and replacing your fleet with EVs. Those are the common sense ones that are available to everybody. Beyond that, we start looking at some of the ways where convergent trends that are occurring could unfold in really interesting ways. And I think your head goes there. You probably know a lot more about this than I, but if you combine AI with digitization and energy, there's major opportunities for building products and services to support this transition, whether they be industry focused or whether they be consumer focused. And there are some fantastic futurists thinking about what might happen with EVs and robo-taxis. And Mike Sieber, I think his name is an example. There's no end of the creative solutions. So for many of the EO businesses where energy is just one of their inputs and not much thought of, those are where you'd start. It's electric vehicles, solar power, and heat pumps, the primary easy wins. But starting to think about, okay, well, how can I play a part in this transformation, and in doing so, apply all the lessons that you've learned along the way to charting a future for our country and the planet as we decarbonise. To me, that's an exciting challenge and a worthwhile one.
And so given some of the green financing options with banks, I think, for example, without talking about a particular bank, but I know this for a fact that
CBA provide fixed rate loans at 1.99% to essentially electrify your home, and you're saying that the cost of electricity is it's rising faster than inflation. You're saying it's a bit of a no-brainer to ensure that you start getting the right green tech into your home.
That's right. Look, getting off gas, we see so many issues with gas. Not only that it's high cost now, it used to be very, very cheap, but indoor air quality and the impact it has on your health, everything you can be doing to reduce your energy consumption in your home really makes sense moving forward, because it frees up that expenditure to do more useful things in future. So yes, you're right. Saul Griffiths is certainly charting the vision of the future, which is a fully electric home. And so, new build homes are being built without any gas. I'm excited about the electricity has such greater value than any other energy form. Of course, we all take it for granted and don't think about it too much, but it's one of those things that will underpin our economy for and our living standard for quite some time.
Mm. Are there any myths that you see maybe espoused by the fossil fuel industry or laggard or incumbent interests that you'd like to debunk or demystify as people think about how to invest their dollars into a more sustainable future for their homes, their families, and for the planet ultimately?
Look, I think the current myth